Good morning, everyone. My name is Michel Nienhuis. I am Dutch, as you can hear, but I'm based in Norway. Welcome today. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to be talking about profit. This live stream is only going to be available today. So that's important to remember. It's not recorded, so it's available just today. So great that you're tuning in. So quick background, I've been doing this for almost 13 years. The first 5 years at the advertiser side, and after that at the Google side for the last 7-8 years. And typically I work with the largest advertisers that we have in Northern Europe. And this is, I'm hoping that this is going to be a very interesting session for you today. It's going to be very packed with a lot of information. So it's going to be quite intense. And so if you're thinking to multitask and do something else with this in the background, it might be a bit hard to follow. There's also quite a lot of information on the slides, but we'll be sort of animating them bit by bit, so it makes it easier to digest. But this is really a training. So this is not just a story. This is really a deep dive, a training. And I hope you will enjoy it. Please do put your questions in the chat during when you're thinking about them. You don't have to wait until the end, but we'll be discussing and answering the questions at the end. Keep in mind that the betas that we're talking about today are under NDA. So it's only for advertisers, agencies that have signed an NDA with Google. So if you manage to sign up, you should have an NDA. Just be sure that this is not public information, these betas. Hope you're all ready. Then we'll get started. So driving more profit, it is a hot topic. It's top of mind for many retailers. So today we'll be focusing on retail. And part of the reason is that the cost of buying things is just higher. Interest rates are higher, loan prices are higher. So that is one element of it. But the other is, of course, the salary cost. When people want to earn more because of inflation, that also increases salary costs. And the third part is that consumers may not have as much to spend as before, also due to high mortgage costs and inflation. And that is also affecting the bottom line and the demand, so the top line. And all of this we hear from our retailers that many of them are focused on increasing profit, growing more profitably. So what we'll discuss today is what we could call the AI-powered profit engine. These are 3 strategies to improve profitability. They are not, you don't need to do all of them together. You can do any of the 3, but they are more powerful if you combine 2 or 3 out of 3. So these are 3 independent strategies. We'll discuss them one by one. The first is profit bidding, where we distinguish between profit influenced and profit-based bidding, which I'll go into in a bit more detail soon. That has a potential uplift, what we see in our profit goals beta, 15% more gross profit at the same ad spend. So that's kind of a typical result you can expect from profit bidding. The second part is finding the most profitable customers. Focusing your ad spend on the most profitable customers, meaning the ones that actually give you the highest lifetime value, the most profit. This is up to you how you define profitable, and the uplift of this is very dependent on your business, so we cannot give a number for that. The third leg of the stool is AI-driven pricing. And then we're talking about betas called automated discounts and dynamic promotions. You can use either of those 2. And that has to do with the pricing that you show on shopping. There we see really, really strong impact. We see 61% more gross profit typically. This is a bit early days and early data, so this is not a specific uplift that we promise, but in this pilot, in the beta, we have seen this type of uplift in gross profit. So we see about 44% more clicks coming through because of those discounts. So this is really exciting, and we'll talk about that in the last part. Now, when you want to maximize your total profit, you should, of course, use the power pairing, as we call it, broad match and PMax. That's kind of basics by now. And we add demand gen to that mix, which we'll also talk about today under the second part of finding the most profitable customers. Bidding for profit. So there's 2 recipes and a variety of flavors. First, you need to understand, how do you define profit? So for your business or your client's business, if you're an agency, how do you define profit? This is really, really important. You need to think, how important are returns? So for example, if returns are the most important thing, we know from certain verticals like shoes or clothing, sometimes it's half of orders that are returned or half of products that are returned. Then that is what you should focus on. It doesn't make sense to try and optimize for deeper levels of profit if you're not tackling returns first. If you are familiar with the profit and loss or P&L sheet, you will understand this chart. We'll go through a bit briefly, but this is really important as basic knowledge. And this is what also will set you apart as performance marketer. If you understand finance and profit, you will be much more valuable, I think, if you understand this. So on the left, we have the gross revenue. So just the sales or the revenue. Then you have discounts that are, of course, removed. And then you have returns. So for example, in this example data, it's 10%, so to say, that gets returned, or 10 euros out of 100 euros on average gets returned. Then you have the net revenue. If you're able to send in net revenue, that's already really powerful. But of course, you don't know the returns upfront. You can predict them, which we'll also discuss. But anyway, there we are at net revenue. Then you have where you see COGS, that's cost of goods sold. So this is the purchasing cost of the products. So what, as a retailer, you spend to purchase those products. That's the cost of goods sold. If you remove that, you have the gross profit. So we often call it gross profit 1, GP1. Sometimes people use contribution margin 1, but that's not exactly the same. But for the sake of simplicity, we can use that same for now. We say roughly contribution margin 1. This is already, if you can optimize for this, which what the profit goals beta does, that's already going to be very powerful. Then you have fulfillment costs. So fulfillment cost is like shipping, handling, those kind of costs. They should also be removed. If you do that, what you have left is called gross profit 2, GP2, or sometimes contribution margin 2. But again, it's not exactly the same. That is sort of, if you think about that number, that's where the break even is. So if you have spent 30, in this case euros, for example, on Google Ads, and you have a 30 euros GP2, you break even. Now, often you want to not break even, but actually have a specific minimum profitability level, because you need to cover things like the fixed costs, capital costs, all that types of things that you need to have a minimum margin or minimum EBITDA. So that, and then if that's 5, for example, you end up with 25 as a max acceptable cost of sale on the right-hand side. But then maybe there's a cost of sale that is a bit higher if you're thinking about lifetime value. Lifetime value is not something that we'll discuss today in depth. And the reason is that within retail specific, what we see is that people often search for every purchase or many purchases, right? If you have an app-based business, a subscription-based business, LTV is very interesting. But if you're retail, people are price comparing a lot and searching a lot. You know, how loyal are they really? If your customers are not super loyal, then LTV is maybe a bridge too far. I would not focus on that now. So this is kind of basic understanding, but very important. I'll speed up a little bit. If we go to the next one, we need to understand first if your organization as an advertiser is ready. So if your primary business objective is revenue or market share, you have to be a bit careful, because there are some subtleties which we'll go into a bit later. But if you want to push revenue, market share, even if it's unprofitable, then of course profit bidding is not a good fit. The second is if you understand which products you're selling at a loss in order to drive people to the store. That's very typical. You have some products that are really popular, but they're unprofitable, but get people to the store and then they spend other stuff, they buy other stuff that's actually profitable. So you also need to understand this before you do anything like profit influence bidding, which we'll talk about very soon. And then the finance department. It's very important to be in touch with the finance department, with accounting, CFO if possible, to understand like what is profit, to be aligned on should we optimize the profit, and can we have agile budgets, because then we can maximize profit. If we have fixed budgets, why is that? Let's discuss. This is a lot of work to do before you do any type of profit optimization. Now, if you think about profitability from online advertising, if you have implemented what we call conversions with cart data, then you'll actually be able to analyze this in a much better way. So what you get, conversions with cart data, is basically that in the conversion, that can be a Google Ads pixel, can be GA4. In the conversion, you also send along which SKUs, which items were purchased, and the price of each item. So that's what you do with conversions with cart data, and potentially the shipping and discount as well, and tax, like VAT. You send those in separately, and then we can analyze that in Google Ads. You get reporting on gross profit and a lot of things that you can see, because what people click is not always what they buy. Very often they buy other products together, or a completely different product instead of what they clicked, or from the same category, a different item with a very different margin. So this is really important. So first you need to understand what is actually being put in the basket, what is in this order, what is in this conversion. That is important. What is determining the basket size? Second thing is understanding the cross-sell between categories. So as I mentioned, people buy different things, not just the one they clicked on, they buy different stuff as well. So you need to understand this. And then you can understand the profitability. This is what conversions with cart data helps you with. And that's why this is kind of a basic measurement thing to have in place when we talk about profit goals, we talk about automated discounts later. This is all based on conversions with cart data. You can also do, of course, custom type of profit bidding. So you don't need to do this with conversions with cart data, but that's a part of what we'll focus on today, how we can help you without external tooling necessarily, or doing custom profit. But we'll discuss both options. So first, we should distinguish between profit influence bidding and profit-based bidding. So imagine someone searches for shoes and they click an ad for shoes. Then they add stuff to the basket. We don't know what, unless you've implemented conversions with cart data. And then you send in a value, which is the revenue, for example. Now, if they don't buy just shoes, they buy also a dress and something from the home department. You can imagine there's 3 products in the order. The dress, 500 kroner, for example, shoes, 200 kroner, and home products, 500 kroner. The cost of goods sold in the second column on the right-hand side is very different for each. So dresses are maybe really expensive to purchase, shoes very cheap, and the home is kind of in the middle. So the gross profit for each is also very different. So for dresses, it's 100 kroner gross profit. On the top right, you see that out of 500 price, so like 20%, right? For the shoes, it may be 150 kroner out of 200 revenue, so much higher profit margins, right? So this is very interesting, because if you do profit influence bidding, that means you're just bidding to revenue, but you're structuring your campaigns based on profitability. So you're doing a custom label in your shopping feed, and you're separating products that way. What we see then when someone makes a purchase is 1,239 in this example, which is the revenue, right? But the profit is on the bottom right. You see the profit of this order is 489, which is what you would use if you do profit-based bidding in your conversion tracking. You see on the right, the shoes, that's 150 gross profit out of 200, so it's like 75% gross profit margin. If people click an ad for shoes, you're probably having a custom label optimizing to the 75% gross profit margin. But actually, this whole order has a very different profit margin, right? So the actual margin of this order is, in this example, is 39%. 489 out of 1239, and not 75%. So you can already see that if you do profit influence bidding, structuring your campaigns based on margin, but bidding to revenue, you're going to be bidding actually pretty wrongly in this case. you're setting your ROAS thinking there's a 75% margin on this campaign, but it's not. It's 39% in this order. So this is really, really interesting. And this is sort of the difference between profit influenced and profit based. So to make it a bit more explicit, if you do profit-based bidding, the profit is in the conversion tracking, and you can structure your campaigns by something else than profit margin. So you can structure your campaigns based on inventory, for example, on things that you want to push harder, sell more of, get rid of. So on the left-hand side, we see profit influence bidding. Again, you would use revenue, you set your ROAS target based on, the bucket, the custom label of those products in that campaign. That's kind of the classical way. This is as old as Rome, I would say. It's a very old method of doing optimization. You would have a high margin campaign, medium margin campaign, low margin campaign, or it could be dresses, shoes, home, if they have 3 distinct sort of profit buckets. So there's different ways to do this. But you would set different ROAS targets based on that kind of margin, and perhaps things like the return rate or discounts or other things that you want to keep in mind. You're setting different ROAS targets, right? The pros of this approach, what we call profit influence bidding, is that you don't need any data integration, except maybe custom labels in your shopping feed. There's not really tech resources besides the shopping feed that you need, because you're just bidding to revenue. And it's easier to drive just top line revenue if you don't care about the margin, you just want to push sales. The downsides of this are that you're optimizing to the ad that's clicked and not the actual products that are bought. The second is that you can overspend a lot on products that have a really low or no profit, because you're bidding to revenue. Maybe they have really high revenue, they have very poor margin or negative margin, but you're pushing them anyway, right? Bidding is pushing them because they have high revenue. But that is then decreasing your profit margin, and then you're going to get less budgets for Google Ads, for marketing budget. So indirectly, you are still going to be constrained by profit margin. It's just not explicit, so it's suboptimal. And then you cannot structure campaigns necessarily based on inventory needs, or you get a very elaborate campaign structure. But you need to structure your campaigns a bit based on margin, right? So you lose kind of this extra lever of structuring based on inventory needs without getting super granular, high margin, low inventory, like combination type of campaigns. If we go to profit-based bidding on the right, that's where you set your ROAS targets based on other needs like inventory or what you want to push or volume. And there you, for instance, have a campaign that could be clearance, where you need to get rid of the stock. Then a traffic driver campaign, where the product that they click is not profitable, but they end up buying stuff that is profitable. And again, with profit influence bidding, you wouldn't know this. And maybe the traffic driver is in a campaign with a low margin and a high ROAS target. Whereas if the traffic driver is driving a lot of actual profit and you do profit-based bidding will accelerate, and you will actually get a lot more volume out of those. And then you have perhaps a low stock campaign where maybe it's going to be sold probably anyway. You can set a really high ROAS target, protect the margin, right? You can push based on the profit margin that you want to achieve. So your ROAS target is kind of some people call it POAS, the profit on ad spend. Your ROAS target is reflecting the profit you want to get out of it, not the revenue. The pros of this are that you're bidding to actual profit. You take into account cross-selling. You can efficiently maximize volume within a cost of sale or margin requirement, again, because you're bidding directly to the constraint that is profit. It's also easier to optimize for the margin after removing the Google Ads cost. That's what we call GP3. So if you take the net profit and then you deduct the marketing cost, the Google Ads cost, and you end up with the real profit, the GP3. You can optimize much easier to that because you can use target ROAS like landscapes, bid landscapes, the bid simulator, to look at like, okay, what is the profit I'm going to get at which ad spend? And then you deduct those two and you understand what is the profit you're driving. Whereas if you do that with revenue based, you need to do much more tricks to translate it to profit and net profit or GP3. The downside is you need data integration, tech resources. It's harder to drive top line revenue. If you do have negative margin or zero margin, you want to push stuff, it's a bit harder because you need to set really low ROAS targets potentially, or maybe you need to even change bid strategy. And there's often organizational change that you need to to really optimize the profit, have the whole department, marketing department, finance understanding how to bid the profit. And it's a bit hard to test, A/B test this. I will get to that in a moment. So profit-based bidding is better than profit influence bidding when the margins are fluctuating a lot between conversions in the same campaign. If the click-to-purchase rate is low, so meaning very often the product that people click is not the product that they buy, that profit-based bidding is more powerful because you're looking at what they buy, not what they click. And the net profit when it matters, that I just mentioned, is easier to optimize to net profit after Google Ads cost. When profit influence bidding, the old-fashioned way is better, is when people very often end up buying exactly the product they click, because maybe you don't sell many products, so maybe they often buy anyway the same product they click. Then you don't need to do profit-based. You can just do profit influence. Or when the margin is almost the same across all products, and the most conversions have the same margin percent, then also doesn't make sense, right? Or when you cannot or don't want to share any type of profit or cost of goods sold data with Google, there are ways to do this very securely with, for instance, server-side GTM. There's a lot of things we can do to make sure this is completely secure. You should never send this, obviously, in your regular client-side tag manager where everyone can see it in the source code. But sometimes you don't want to share anything at all. You can use also proxy values, by the way. You can send relative profit values. You don't need to, it can be multiplied with a certain factor. Like, we don't need to have the exact number. It's about the relative difference. Anyway, there is a decision tree that I put on the screen here. Where on the left, you first need to ask yourself, are you having all the basics in place? If not, start with the basics, meaning value-based bidding, performance max, broad match, enhanced conversions, web to app connect is really important. If you have an app, make sure you measure the app conversions. Otherwise, that's kind of priority number one. Don't bother about profit bidding. First, get the app conversions in there. Store sales. If you have a lot of stores, you have a lot of store visits or store sales. If you're not including those in bidding, what we call omnichannel bidding, do that first. Because otherwise, again, it doesn't make sense to optimize the profit if you're leaving out a massive amount of offline sales. So that is the low risk basics that you first need to get in place. And also new customer acquisition goals, which we'll talk about in a moment. Then the next, on the left, you see, if you have the basics in place, the second step is if your growing profit is the primary business objective. If not, maybe stick with profit influence bidding. If it is, and you're able to optimize to online sales only, you can pass the margin or cost of goods sold data. Then you still need to ask yourself, is the margin, does it fluctuate a lot? Do people often click something different than they buy? Yes. Okay, then we are talking about that it makes sense to do profit-based bidding. And if you do profit-based bidding, on the top right, you see option 1, profit-based bidding. You have 2 solutions, which we'll go into in a moment. If you go with profit influence bidding, there are 3 alternative solutions, which I also touch upon. Profit-based bidding, 2 alternatives, profit goals, beta, or custom. You first need to understand how far down this profit and loss sheet, the P&L, do you want to go. If you want to go for gross revenue, again, stick with profit influenced. If you want to just focus on returns, getting the returns out of there, then you can see here net revenue, predictive returns. That is typically a sort of cloud integration where you do a prediction when someone places an order, like how likely is this order to be returned or partially returned. Not really profit-based bidding necessarily, but for fashion or shoes, it makes a huge difference. And this is priority number 1, probably. If you then want to go to gross profit, you get the point. We spoke about this a bit earlier. Then you can use those 2 options that I'm going to discuss now. So alternative A is the profit goals beta. We see a 15% gross profit uplift in this. It's a bit hard to see on the screen. It is a solution that we offer in Google Ads as a beta. Again, this is NDA only. What you need to do is pass conversions with cart data. So you need to tell us which SKUs, which items are in the cart. And you pass the cost of goods sold. So the cost of each SKU in the merchant center. So in the merchant center, in your shopping feed, you put an extra field with the cost of goods sold. If you do those things and you're on this beta, you can optimize to gross profit on a campaign level. So this is very cool because per campaign, you can choose should this campaign optimize to the normal revenue or to gross profit. We won't go super in depth on this now, but this is very cool because it's a separate bidding model, meaning you can switch seamlessly between profit and revenue on a campaign level, and you can A/B test it against each other within PMax even. Because this is for PMax and regular shopping, not yet for search, but you can A/B test. So you can A/B test revenue optimization versus profit in a good way. Whereas if you do it the normal way, which is the profit-based bidding with custom, which we'll get to in a moment, it's very hard because smart bidding is training at the total sort of conversion tracking level. So if you do some campaigns or experiment arms to profit, others to revenue, they train together. So the data gets blended when smart bidding is learning. So you're not actually doing a clean A/B test. And it typically takes a few weeks before bidding starts to understand that you switch from revenue to profit. Whereas with this beta, it's instant. You switch basically bidding model from revenue to profit. So this is a very cool beta. And we've seen really good results. It's a bit early days. We don't have many case studies yet, but this is really interesting. This was announced on GML, by the way, if you've probably seen it. Profit goals, max profit, there's different words for it. So this is a bit what I just discussed. People click on an ad, they buy hats and sunglasses, for example, and in the conversion you send, oh, they bought this hat, this sunglasses, this is the price they paid. And then in the merchant center, you have the cost of goods sold. We combine those things, deduct them. So we deduct the cost of goods sold from the price, right? And then what you have left is the gross profit. And we first translate that into a percentage, and then we apply that to the conversion value. So you get the gross profit in Google Ads, and then we can optimize to that. And just to be clear, there's no profit data that you're sharing in your conversion, right? You're just sharing which SKUs have been bought. And then we fetch the data in the backend from the merchant center when it comes to the cost, and then we can calculate the gross profit. Drawbacks of this is that it's for now only gross profit. You can deduct a discount, but you cannot deduct like shipping or returns or other types of costs. So it's a bit limited to gross profit. So it's a more simplistic solution. It's only PMax and standard shopping for now, and it's not yet compatible with, for instance, omni-channel bidding, floodlights, demand gen. So it is, a little bit limited in that sense, but it covers most use cases because shopping and PMax is typically the biggest for retailers, right? And the tech integration may take a little bit of time because you need to have that conversions with card data, and you need to get the cost of goods sold in the merchant center. The cool thing is that this can be A/B tested, which is very rigorous. It's better than pre-post causal impact. It's not as good as incrementality testing, but A/B testing is a very good way to see actually what is happening when I change from revenue to profit bidding. The second alternative is custom bidding. So for example, Omoda had a great case study on this. They got 14% more profit and 5% lower returns by predicting returns. So what they did was basically in BigQuery, a cloud, we're looking at what is in the basket, what payment method are they using, and if they order, for example, two items, two sizes of the same shirt or shoes, very likely one is going to be returned, right? So it's a high accuracy prediction. I think it's more than 80% accurate in terms of what is going to be the actual revenue of this order after the returns. We calculate this in BigQuery, and then we send that in with server-side GTM straight into Google Ads. And then Omoda optimizes to the revenue after returns. So this is very big for them because they used to have a lot of returns. So this is what we call custom. This is not even like looking at cost of goods sold, but this is custom bidding, custom profit. The drawbacks of this are that, again, it's a bit hard to A/B test it or switch because smart bidding is training together at the conversion tracking level, account level, or MCC level. You can only do A/B tests on search, not on PMax, although that's also changing soon because we have some cool betas coming up on PMax testing, so stay tuned for that. And you cannot easily transition. There's some weeks of like learning in between, right, when you change from revenue to profit bidding. Then the technical complexity is also a bit higher, especially if you want to do it quickly, you want to calculate profit, you need to have BigQuery, you can do it other ways with conversion adjustments, but it's also not ideal. It's a bit more technically challenging to do this. And then you should not probably use things like offline conversion import because they're not durable when it comes to the gclit in the URL slowly getting blocked by browsers, for example. Option 2 is profit influence bidding. I'll touch very briefly on this. This is when you look at ROAS, margin, stock, the margin and the stock that you want to achieve. You put it in a custom label in your shopping feed, and then you structure your campaigns like we discussed at the beginning, and you set ROAS targets based on that. That is quite tough, and if you then want to optimize the profit, you need to do this kind of exercise where you're plotting the revenue and the profit kind of offline in a spreadsheet. And if you look at the slide here, you see revenue is green. If you have a high ROAS target, it's on the left-hand side. A low ROAS target is on the right-hand side. So when you lower your ROAS, you'll get more and more revenue, obviously. Your profit goes up to a certain point, and after that, you start to drop profit. Basically, you're starting to overspend. So every order you make is not profitable because the ad spend for each order is too high. That's what you see in the black line is the incremental profit per order. That's really high if you have a very high ROAS target, but the volumes will be low. The higher your ROAS target goes, the lower it goes, the incremental profit goes down and down and down until it hits zero. That's when you've maximized your profit. And then you start to drop in terms of total profit, even if revenue is still creeping up. So you need to then calibrate and try to understand where you are on the curve and move up and down that way, which is not easy. You can use performance planner data for this. I won't go into details now, but you can use performance planner, do some offline calculations on profit with some assumptions and averages, or you can use the target simulator. So that's when you sort of these bid landscapes you see on the bottom right in your ROAS strategies. You have this little icon, and then you can pull this even with the API at scale, and then try to figure out the optimum profit point for your revenue if you do revenue bidding. So profit influence bidding, I'm talking about, right? If you do profit-based bidding, you can use this to optimize to the net profit. So because then you have conversion value as profit minus ads cost is your net profit. So that's even better. There's another way to do sit down with the market, with the finance department, go very deep, but I won't touch on that now. But for the really advanced clients, there are even deeper ways to do this. And sometimes we can support with that. I'll move on to step 2, and I'll go a little bit faster. This is a bit of a new story, and it takes takes a little bit longer than I wanted, but I think it's going to be valuable for you. Finding your most valuable customers. So using your own insights about which customers are valuable. Typically, you have this already in your CRM system. It's very typical that companies identify high LTV customers or high value customers. Now you need to activate them. Activating on search and shopping, but also on demand gen. So we call this customer lifecycle solutions. And this works with both profit-based and profit influence bidding. It's based on customer match, and you can do new customer acquisition, which I'm sure you've heard about by now, but you can also do a separate mode called high value new customers. So you can bid even higher for customers that are similar to your high value customer list. So it's like lookalikes of your high LTV customer match list. Focus on optimizing to those. And then the new one that we're launching is called customer retention, re-engagement goal, where you can bid up for existing customers that are maybe about to churn, or they have churned, they're inactive, you want to win them back. It's kind of a win back mode. This is super important. If you don't use this, and you have the consent in place, you have a good customer list, and you're not using this, you're not focusing your ad spend on the right customers that you want to acquire. We can combine this, by the way, with conversion value rules, which allows you to, for example, bid down on certain existing customer lists, for example, if that's what you want. If you have people that click a lot of ads, but they never buy, but you know who they are, maybe you can lower the bid on those, for example. Or if some are super, super loyal, they're going to buy anyway, maybe you can also bid down on those, rather bid up on new customers. So out of the same ad spend, you get much more incremental value. This is kind of the different goals you have. So you have new customer acquisition on the top left. You can do optimize only for new customers, but that's more like a lead gen play maybe. New customer value mode is when you boost the value. When we think a customer is new, and we think a customer is new based on customer match, your conversion pixel, and we also learn from, if you do it in your conversion tag, you can also later tell us if this was new or existing, and we also learn from that as validation. And with AI, we try to estimate is this person who's Googling now, who's searching, is he new or existing? And then we multiply the bid. We increase the bid based on the value that you give. So it's like an auction time thing. So this is important to understand. This is like a real-time thing. That's also why you can change, switch it off anytime. It works at auction time. Then we have the second goal, which is retention. That's where you can do, you can focus on lapsed customers and also high value lapsed customers. So you can distinguish between regular value and high value with these solutions, which is very interesting because you can then focus on these similar audiences, almost the lookalikes to the high value list for new customers, but also maybe your high value existing. Those are the ones you want to boost more, and the low value existing, maybe you don't want to boost them, right? And then you can also re-engage them via demand gen. So you can use customer match as targeting for demand gen. It's owned and operated, just YouTube, Gmail, Discover feed, or at least Discover feed. This is really owned and operated, no display network. You can focus ad spend on those very valuable high LTV customers. And why is that interesting? Because YouTube is super important for research. People are very often using YouTube for researching. It's the number one platform. Number two, high value customers, meaning we see a 1.6 times increase in basket size when people first, or they search on both YouTube and search, versus if they only search on search and not on YouTube. So we see high value engaged customers when we see them on both YouTube and search. And also loyalty. So if people have YouTube in the purchase journey, we see 85% planning or having made a repeat purchase. So it's very loyal type of customers as well. And why this is relevant for profit bidding is also because, first of all, you can re-engage those very high LTV customers or onboard them. But the other thing is you're growing demand. So if you've maxed out on profit, you're kind of dominating for instance, the impression share, whatever it is, you have a limit in terms of your profitability. You cannot bid any higher. That's where you can accelerate make the funnel bigger, right? So you're making the funnel bigger and you don't hit that ceiling so quickly. So you increase the funnel at the top, meaning the funnel also increases at the bottom. And it has a branding component included in it. You're kind of increasing brand consideration at the same time. So it's like a funnel. You're feeding search and PMax with demand gen. So it's and maybe the ROAS, the profit level is not that high on demand gen, but it feeds into search and PMax, where then your CPA will decrease, your ROAS will increase on search and PMax. Then the last part, AI-driven pricing, and this is very cool. If you use this beta, again, this is NDA, we have two betas. One is called automated discounts, the other is called dynamic promotions. They work, the effect is the same, and you have to choose between them. Automated discounts allows Google to dynamically lower the price, like give a discount on shopping. Based on the minimum and maximum price that you decide, within that range, we can, using machine learning or AI, of course, this is very cool because what we use is the price elasticity of this item. So if we change the price, people will, more likely buy or not. It's the elasticity of the price. We also look at the price of the same product for other merchants. So what is the market asking? What are your competitors asking? And we look at seasonality and different parameters. You have your own little sort of AI model just for you as a merchant, where every day, this is channel-based pricing and not personalized. Channel-based pricing, we can increase or lower the price dynamically based on this AI model, where we think if we lower the price by this amount, we give this discount, we expect to drive more profit. So when we expect to drive more gross profit, then we do that discount. So this requires, again, like the profit goals, conversions with cart data, but also the cost of goods sold in the merchant center feed, because we optimize to the profit. So this requires you also to change the landing page a little bit. We call it JSON, because the price that they see on shopping also needs to be the same price on your landing page, right? So you need to have a dynamic element on the landing page. So there's a bit of tech integration here. If you don't want to do that or cannot do that, we have an alternative called dynamic promotions, where rather than changing the price, you're offering a voucher code. So you give a list of voucher codes, we select among them, and then on your landing page, you need just to have a banner with the voucher code, and then you don't need to change the price. So for some retailers, that is easier. The downside is that the voucher sometimes applies across more products or product categories, so that could impact your margin differently. So automated discounts is from that perspective a bit better. You set the desired price range, and we use market prices, elasticity, seasonality, even the estimated delivery day to set the discount once or twice a day. And we have a small holdout control group, so we can show you the uplift that we're driving in profit. We see on average, it says 40%. There's actually like 60, 61% we're also seeing typically in this beta in incremental gross profit. 44% more clicks. It has a big impact if you discount in a smart AI-driven way. This is a very cool feature, and we see some great cases as well. We have a company called Nice Shops, 56% increase in conversions at the same gross profit per ad spend, 26% higher conversion rate. We have another called Alensa, 95% increase in gross profit, which is massive, 72% increase in clicks. This is a Polish retailer. And one that just came in, I'm going to be done in 2 minutes, and then we have time for questions. One that just came in is called Home24. It's a big German company, a leading retailer in Germany and in Europe. Very cool, they did this. Here we see 10% more revenue, 10% more ROAS, 50% more conversions. Big increase. And if you talk about a big retailer, this is massive, right? So we don't always see 40, 50, 60%. Sometimes it's 10, 15%, but if you are a big retailer, this is really big. This is dynamic promotions. It works the same as automated discounts. So the 3 strategies to increase profit is profit bidding, influenced, or profit based. And again, profit based is kind of better in many ways, but it's not always suitable. Finding the most profitable customers with customer match, NCA, retention, value rules, and demand gen. And then number 3 is AI-driven pricing, what you could call merchandising. We also call that merchandising. Now, of course, these only work if you also maximize your coverage. So you're present on PMax, demand gen, broad match. So broad match, we see 12% increase in conversion value from phrase, and 20% increase in conversion value from exact at the same ROAS. Enhanced conversions, 5% more. So these are kind of the basics. You need to be present everywhere, have that coverage, have agile budgets. Only then the profit engine really works at the maximum power. Thank you very much. I'll be tuning out, and I wish you a great day.